I'm sorry, everyone. We had a couple of technical issues, but now we're actually here back at the UN with a mic, so hopefully you can hear us. Welcome to MSP-TV, and from the second meeting of states parties to the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Today has been a busy day here in the UN. The general debate has started. It will continue. It's happening right now and will also continue tomorrow. We've had the second panel on the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons. And actually, the campaigners and activists working on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons have taken over the UN building. Today, we have two very special guests with us. So welcome in, Dimity Hawkins and Elizabeth Minor. Dimity, you are one of the founders of ICANN and are now working on the Nuclear Truth Project. Tomorrow, you're organizing a side event on challenging the nuclear secrecy and access to nuclear archives. Can you tell us a bit about the event?
Sure. We've got we have a panel, a side event here, and we will be hearing from several of the people who helped inform a report that we put out in earlier this year, and that will look at nuclear archives and accessing nuclear archives, because this is one of the essential things that's happening, and one of the essential calls that we're hearing a lot in the debates and the thematic debates at this conference is the need to access records for communities who've been impacted by nuclear weapons. So this is one of the essential things. And in this particular event, we will also be hearing from frontline communities, so affected community members as well. So there's a wonderful team of people who are coming in to have a conversation about that, which I'm pretty excited about.
Thank you. And what's actually the Nuclear Truth Project? What's it about?
What's it about? It's about working with affected community members. So this is one of those things that's so essential to the work that we're talking about. When we're talking about humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons, we have to be thinking about how we work with those communities that are most impacted. And we've heard some incredible panels today, including one that Elizabeth was instrumental in running today as well. Those voices from survivors are so crucial to our work and our understandings and to advancing the humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons. But also we have to be aware of the impact on those communities, already very burdened communities, and we have to be aware of how we interact with them. So a key to the Nuclear Truth Project has been developing protocols for how we work with those communities, and also to looking at things like how we get access to information. So that's what this Challenging Nuclear Secrecy report has been about as well.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you can find more information about the project online. And Elizabeth, you work as an advisor at Article 36 and has worked a lot with the implementation of Article 6 and 7 of the TPNW. You're one of those who have followed most closely the working group's process on how to actually implement these articles. What can we expect in terms of outcome for victim assistance and environmental remediation during this meeting?
Sure. So yeah, this is the part of the treaty, Articles 6 and 7, that deals with victim assistance, environmental remediation, and international cooperation and assistance. So it's the bit of the TPNW where states have established this framework, a new framework of shared responsibility to deal with the ongoing impacts in communities of nuclear weapons use and testing. And it's something that's unique in the nuclear disarmament international architecture. It's the first framework that does this. At the first meeting of states parties, states agreed a load of actions for how they'll take their first steps in implementing these articles, including, very importantly, some commitments to inclusivity and to working closely with affected communities as well as other stakeholders in implementation. So the main things they've been concentrating on this year, really, I suppose, are kind of very first steps and laying the groundwork for this implementation. So the working group has been discussing issues including national implementation measures, we're expecting that 3 or 4 countries who have communities affected by the testing of nuclear weapons are bringing reports to the meeting of states parties with kind of initial assessments of the harm in their countries and how it's being dealt with currently, including Kiribati and Kazakhstan, who have been leading the working group discussions this year. Also, New Zealand is putting in a report about its test veterans. So they've been doing some work discussing this, doing initial actions in relation to assessing harm, like I was saying, that they need to build on in order to look at how this should be addressed and what requests for international cooperation and assistance states need. The other things they've been concentrating on are looking at kind of measures to strengthen their implementation of the treaty in this area. So they've been discussing guidelines for voluntary reporting by states on their national implementation measures. And we're expecting at the 2 MSP that there'll be a decision to kind of provisionally adopt some tools for that and to encourage states to use them, which will be really good for kind of strengthening accountability and implementation. They've also been discussing this issue of establishing an international trust fund for victim assistance and environmental remediation. And we can expect a decision to kind of continue discussions on that. And I mean, our goal as ICANN, or what we'd encourage states to do, is to have the ambition to establish this by the 3rd meeting of states parties. But of course, all this is, really just the start in this area, right? Their goal should be to really make a practical impact for affected communities. And in order to do that, they need to build work to kind of really center affected communities, find out what they need in this work with them, increase the resources that are available for this work, and improve the practice. And it's going to be a long time and decades of work to be implementing these articles.
Thank you. It's encouraging to hear that we are actually taking steps in the right direction and that this treaty really helps us doing that. In the general debate, I've heard there will be a statement from impacted communities. Can you say anything about that process?
Yeah, so I'll also hand over to Dimity, who was quite more closely involved in this. But just to say about that statement, I mean, it's a really powerful statement from affected communities around the world, which, as Dimity said, it's so important to centre in this work about, addressing the humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons through prohibition, but also through addressing the legacies that are being experienced. So there's, recommendations from impacted communities about what they want states parties to hear about, what they want to see addressed and the justice that they want to see. And I think it's been a very interesting, inclusive process to bring that along.
Yeah, certainly. I think that Gemma Mould, who's from ICANN Australia, helped lead that process, but really in a facilitation role. It was really led by an amazing array of activists and people with lived experience expertise from around the world. And there were meetings after meetings after meetings over several weeks where people discussed ideas, where they framed the key calls, and where they actually looked at how they could find commonality between the very many different stories that happen between affected communities, because there's so many different affected communities from different harms, but the commonalities that came through that are really powerful. And it's, as Elizabeth said, it's an incredibly powerful statement, and it's going to be really uplifting the voices of affected communities in a way that we have not yet seen in these processes, I think, in a collective sense.
Thank you so much for giving us an insight in what's going on. For me, this is like one of the most important things with the treaty, and really centering those who have experienced the horrible harm done by nuclear weapons. Today and yesterday, we've had panel discussions in the Trusteeship Council on the humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons. What's your first impressions from these discussions?
Well, I think it's very good that the president of the 2nd meeting of States Party decided to have this as part of the MSP, because I think it's always extremely important to be hearing this evidence about what do nuclear weapons actually do to people and places, which is why we are here, why we have this treaty, and why we're doing this work. And it's so important to hear about that from all the experts who have expertise in this area, right? Like scientific, humanitarian, but also, as we've been talking about, obviously the experiences of affected communities who know this more than anyone else, what the consequences of nuclear weapons are. So I think we've seen, some really good speakers on the panels, showing all these different kinds of things. And it's, very important for state delegates to hear that at the start of this meeting and to prepare them for their work that they're doing.
I think also there's lived experience is so clearly, the thing that informs science. It's the thing that informs medicine. It's the thing that informs so much of what is important in all of this. So I think that it's been wonderful to hear, and it's very humbling to hear directly from impacted communities, and they've been incredibly generous in sharing that. It always is a big ask for those stories to be told, and I think we're all very humbled by them as well.
Thank you so much, both of you, for being here and taking the time, and also for everything you do to actually help us reach the goal of a world without nuclear weapons. Our roaming reporter, Emma, has been checking out the exhibition here in the UN from Artists Against the Bomb, and also headed over to the Youth MSP.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Emma for MSP-TV. I'm currently inside the UN building, but I'm actually headed to something called the Youth MSP. It's an event happening today, of course, for the younger generations that is alongside the main MSP. But while I'm on my way there, I want to show you what's happening in the hallway that I'm walking through right now. So this art exhibition called Artists Against the Bomb had its UN premiere last night, and Artists Against the Bomb is a collection of urgent messages calling for universal nuclear disarmament. The exhibition is an international effort by artists, writers, and activists who, through words and pictures, call for a reduction of the world's nuclear weapons down to zero. The exhibition will be up for the duration of the second MSP, and you can find out more about them on Instagram. I'm feeling very grateful and excited because later tonight I have the opportunity to see this exhibition, which is being put together by Pedro Reyes, the artist, as well as ICANN, elsewhere in New York at the Judd Foundation. But first, I'm headed to the Youth MSP, so off I go. Back to you, Tuva.
And we have more amazing guests now from the Youth MSP. Sarah Kutter, and now we have a bit of light problems, but we will continue. And Mohammed El Haji, thank you so much for taking time and being here. How has it been to be at the Youth MSP?
Well, I feel like it's been really good to connect and also reconnect with a lot of young folks who are all into nuclear disarmament, and we all have the same goal. We all want to abolish nuclear weapons, and it has been really good to make new friends and to reconnect with old friends. I don't know, how do you feel about it?
I mean, it's always an honor to be here, actually, since I was last year in Vienna at the first meeting of states parties, and this year also meeting many amazing and incredible people, Hibakasha people, and also activists from all around the world telling their stories, which is very important for us to hear and listen to these people.
How did you get involved in this topic, the topic of nuclear disarmament?
So for me, it was basically through university. I started studying medicine, and then in my second year, there was this very local group of IPPNW, so International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. That's one NGO that I'm affiliated to, and that's where my story began. So I really understood the narrative of the IPPNW that healthcare workers really can't help when there will be a nuclear war or a nuclear threat, because then people will have been damaged and people will have died already. So I really believe that this is true, and that therefore we need to abolish nuclear weapons before the threat will come to reality. So yeah, that's...
For me, I'm a climate activist from Morocco, and I have been working with many issues related to climate change. And when I found out that in our world, especially what is happening in our world, it's very concerning us, especially like the war in the Middle East and now in Ukraine. And for us, like youth, climate activists, researchers, we are looking to build a new world that's based on equality and safety for all.
Yeah, the link between climate change and nuclear weapons are very clear now when we also have COP soon going on at the same time as this important meeting. Why do you think it's important to involve youth in the work against nuclear weapons?
Could you please repeat the question?
Why do you think it's important to involve young people in this work to abolish nuclear weapons?
Yeah, it's really an interesting question, because we youth, we always have a story. We are coming from a background, especially people who are coming from the global south. They have already gone through a lot of trauma, especially climate crisis. People from Africa, people from Asia, from the Caribbean, they have some strong and inspirational stories, and we are part of this story. So we need to give the agency to our community and reach their messages to the world.
Why is the youth perspective so important?
Well, I guess I would simply say because we are the future. We are the people who would need to live with the nuclear threat more time than anybody else. Not, I wouldn't say past generations, because the other people are still living, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I guess that would be my very simple answer to this.
Thank you so much for actually working on this topic. Do you have any messages to young people out there watching the stream?
Yes, I would actually like to convey one message that Emma Pike has said throughout her session at our youth MSP that we had, and she was talking about social media and nuclear weapons, or the nuclear threat in general. And she said that everyone can be an expert. Everyone can convey the message that nuclear weapons are a threat that needs to be gone, that needs to be abolished. So we all have a voice, and it's very important for us young people to use this voice to establish grassroots activism, and then just to spread the message. I think that's something that I would really like to know for everybody to know.
Yeah. And you, Mohammed, do you have any message to other youths out there?
Okay, so we youth activists, we believe we need to believe in ourselves, and we have always that kind of power inside us that we need to influence it, or to change the system. And it's the best way to change the system is to influence politics. And to influence politics is also to encourage youth to come and join us, to join the treaty, to join the nuclear disarmament, to join the climate spaces. That's the best way, so we can live in harmony and a better future.
Thank you so much. A clear message from Youth MSP to join the movement. You have the right to have a say. Tonight, there's a lot of events going on still. We have the Nuclear Free Future Awards. We also have the opening of a huge exhibition of Artists Against the Bomb with more than 200 art pieces. Tomorrow morning, there will be an event at Wall Street focusing on how asset owners, data and security providers, and nuclear experts can minimize the risk taking in their portfolio and strengthen the norm against nuclear weapons. Thank you so much for following the MSP TV. Tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. or 5 p.m. to get the latest updates.